Hi everyone, it's me, New York vocalist Benita Charles, again for another episode of Singing Tips. Normally I'm on Singing Tips on Saturday, but today I decided to come on for today. So we are back for another episode of Singing Tips. Hi, I see I have one person. Thanks so much for joining me on Singing Tips. I see a couple of people, so thanks so much for joining me on Singing Tips. Every week I give singing tips to beginner singers to help them become professional. My name is Benita Charles. I'm here in New York City, and I am back for another episode for our regular singing tip on a special day, Sunday, but it's normally on Saturday. Happy Martin Luther King birthday to our Martin Luther King, who made a difference and changed the world. We're going to be officially celebrating his memory tomorrow. It's a special Martin Luther King Day, but it just goes to show you. I had a post earlier that one person can make a difference, and he definitely made a difference for everyone, and so he made this a better world. So we definitely honor him. We will honor him tomorrow as well. So I hope everyone's having a wonderful, wonderful weekend. I'm back for a singing tip, and we've been talking about songwriting. So this whole section, all the tips that we've had thus far has all been about songwriting. Just to give you a little bit of background of how these tips are organized, I was inspired by a movie, Get On Up, in 2014. Oh, hi, I got a thumbs up from someone. I don't know who that is, but thank you. I can't tell who it is, I'm sorry. But thank you so much for the love. So every week, I told you, I'm going to be talking about this movie, Get On Up, the story of James Brown. And it was, so inspiring. And the concert scene alone, it was worth the movie. I really felt like I was watching James Brown. But James Brown mentioned there was a section in the movie about show business, and he wanted to branch off and do some executive kind of decisions and, some go into the business. And his manager said, played by Dan Aykroyd, he says, this is showbiz. You take care of the show part, and I'll take care of the business. And James Brown said, no, I'm going to do both. And that's exactly what he did. And I feel like we as singers should always identify those two parts and just make sure we incorporate both parts in our career. So that's why I've designed Singing Tips to have a show part and to have a business part. We've been in this show part forever, I know, but we're getting close. But and we're almost out of the songwriting section. Each section has 10 tips. We are on tip number 29. Can you believe it? So there's one more tip in the songwriting section. In this section, we talked about writing your own music. We've talked about writing a hit song. We've talked about collaborations. We've talked about copywriting your music. And so it's everything that's been in this section has all been about songwriting, releasing your own music. And I told you the story at the beginning of this section. When I first came to New York several years ago, a gentleman, and I can't even remember how I met him, but he was in this group called All About Chad, and he gave me his CD. Because at that time I was studying jazz and I was learning these jazz songs. He was like, you know what, Benita, that's fine, that's nice, but you need to write your own music, and you need to release your own music. And he gave me a copy of his CD, and that was the best advice I ever got. And of course at the time I didn't know what he was talking about. I was like, what? I'm writing my own music, I don't know about that. But years later I did that, and that was the best advice. So that's why I wanted to give the advice to you guys to work on your own music. And so last week we talked, the last singing tip in this section was the last singing tip of 2016 when we talked about collaborations. Last week was a special singing tip where we discussed Mariah Carey's performance, New Year's Eve performance. We won't go into that. I know a lot of people are probably sick of talking about it, but it was important that I talked about it because it was actually something that we talked about in singing tips. So we discussed that. And so this week we're going to talk about working with a producer. So, you've got all got your song written, and you got it the way you want it, and now you're ready to put music to it, and you're ready to go in the studio. So that's what we're talking about this week. We're talking about working with a producer. So I just had a few key points about that. And how do you find a producer? The way I found all my producers has usually been on referrals. Like, someone who knew someone recommended. That's pretty much the best way. But I mean, if you don't know anyone, you can go to a studio, because that's where they hang out and that's where they work. And also I have online, there's the Association of Music Producers. They have a directory. You can go in that directory and look to see, maybe someone might catch your eye, or you just might want to talk to a few people and find someone. But I would say the best way is referral. That's kind of the best way, because I mean, it's kind of like a testimonial. Like, someone recommends working with this person, and they've worked with this person, or they can vouch for this person. So I would say referral is the best way. Oh, hi. I see I have like 3 people on here. Hello there. How are you? Thanks for joining. I can't see who you are, but thank you so much for joining me today for Singing Tip. We are on tip number 29, and we are talking about working with a producer. So there's 30 tips in, number 30 will be the last tip in this section. This is all about songwriting. Believe it or not, we're getting close to the end of this section. This is tip number 29, and we're talking about working with a producer, putting music to your song, and going in the studio. So now that you found your producer, oh, hi, Terry. Thanks so much for joining. Happy Sunday. Now that you found your producer, the next thing is establishing a good relationship. So when I first started, I didn't know what a good producer was. Everybody I worked with, for me, was a good producer, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know. So I had some kind of bad producers at the time I didn't know. And I remember this one producer says to me, because well, first of all, I started out live. Like, I didn't start out in the studio, so it was all new to me, and I just really, I wasn't comfortable. Like, I'm a stage performer, so I was used to the audience. I was used to being on stage and the lights, and it's so much more. Oh, hi, how are you? Yeah, it was just so much more production to it. But in the studio, it's you, it's your voice, that's all it is. There's no, extras. There's no body language, and, there's no looking at the audience. And so that was new to me, and I just wasn't comfortable. So I had a producer. Oh, hi, Daishi, how are you? Thanks so much for joining. So I had this producer say to me, he was like, if Whitney Houston would have a problem, why are you having such a problem? And it really made me feel so bad. And at the time, I didn't realize that that's not what a good producer would do. A good producer would get to know you as a singer, a person. They would, get to talk to you, get to know you, see what you like, see what works for you, and they try to work with you. They will work with what they can do to bring out that source that you need to bring out, the source of your feelings and emotions, because that's what is, recording is all about, expressing your feelings and emotion and bringing it out through your voice, through, because I'll tell you, I've had some recordings where I sounded great. Vocals was on point, beautiful quality, but I didn't have any feeling, and it just sounded like wooden. It just sounded hollow. It was horrible. So a good producer would bring that out of you, and and like I said, I didn't know that at the time, but I found out later when I actually worked with good producers. Like, wow, what a difference when someone actually get to know you, and they try to bring out your best, and then there's that trust factor, and then you trust and you feel good, and then you release, because there's a lot of vulnerability that happens, and you gotta kind of be open. You gotta bring the vulnerable side of you, and it's when you don't trust someone, it's hard to bring that out. A good producer will bring that out of you. So that's my tips on that. One bonus tip is to make sure the song is complete before you go in the studio. And I'm telling you this because I have wasted a whole studio session because I didn't have my song finished. And so the producer is, working with me, and we're sitting there trying to, basically write it and finish it. And I wasted like 3 hours in the studio. And now, as opposed to a previous session when I had the song done, it was, well rehearsed. I had practiced it. I wrote it. It was complete. I had like we talked about in some of the previous singing tip about having the chorus and the verse and the bridge. I had everything, and that was the best. We knocked that song out, and it was awesome. So that was a lesson for me that I want to share to you, to make sure the song is complete because time is money. And it doesn't matter. They're going to get their money. So you don't want to waste your money. So my tip is to make sure your song is complete before you go in the studio, and you work with a good producer and you get a masterpiece. So I'm going to do a recap of what we talked about today is working with a producer, because now, you've got your song all together from all the tips that we talked about, writing a hit song, copyright, all that. So now you're ready to work in the studio. And the best way to find a producer is through referrals, word of mouth. But other ways, you can go to a studio because that's where the producers are. That's where they hang out. You can get some referrals that way. Also online at the Association of Music Producers, they have a directory. You can go in there. You might just go randomly and just look to see if there's a name that sounds good. You want to check it out. But always, talk to each other first. And I just did a Periscope about this, and someone brought up a good point that before you work with the producer, it's good to just kind of talk and find out what kind of relationship you want. Is this a work for hire? Are you just, gonna pay them and they don't have any stake in the song? Or are they still expecting to, if they're gonna put music to it, still expecting to have a stake in the song? So that's something that you should, discuss before you start working, because the worst thing is you don't want to have, something finished and then something gets released, starts making money, and then all of a sudden someone comes back to you and say, hey, where's my cut? And you're like, your cut? I just paid you, it's a work for hire. No, you want to make sure you know exactly what kind of relationship you have, and then you get to work. And also, so we talked about working with what a good producer is, and a good producer is someone who will get to know you, get to know your voice, and work with you to bring out your source of feelings and emotion to make a masterpiece. I talked about what a bad producer is, and that's someone who makes you feel bad and don't work with you, and because this particular person said to me, he was like, you're not getting this. If you were Whitney Houston, Whitney Houston wouldn't have this problem. And then that made me feel worse, and that's not what a good producer does. A good producer will work with you and find out what it is, how you work, and they will work within that realm. And also, my bonus tip was to make sure your song is complete before you go in the studio, so that you don't waste your time and money, because there's nothing worse than dropping $300 and you didn't get what you want. $300 or $400, maybe even more, because depending on how much it is per hour, it's even more. So you don't want to waste your time and money. So you make sure your song is written and that you rehearsed it, so that your vocals are on point, because that recording will pick up every imperfection you have. So, just make sure that you are fully prepared. And that's my tip for this week for singing tip, was working with a producer. So thank you guys for joining me. I hope that you have, good. Thank you, Terry. I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah, I'm just sharing my experience, with these singers, and hopefully they can learn from my experience and make this smoother for them. But yeah, that's my experience with. I've had some really great producers throughout my career, and now I know the difference between a good producer and a bad producer. So just make sure it's a good relationship. There's that trust there, and you will come out with a masterpiece. So that is going to do it for me. I want to thank everyone for joining me today. If you're interested in any of the tips that I share with you, you can go to my Instagram account. It's BCM Sings. Click on the bio, and it takes you to all of the singing tips that we've discussed. And yeah, also I'm on YouTube, so you can see all these tips on YouTube as well. I have a playlist on my YouTube channel, Benita Charles. The playlist is singing tips. Click on there, and all of the tips are archived. So yeah, so that is going to do it for me. I want to thank you guys for your attention. Thank you for your support of Singing Tips. And if there's any suggestions that you would like, anything you'd like for me to cover, please let me know. We are pretty much getting ready to wrap up songwriting. We've had 10 tips. We're going to do a recap show as well, so I'll review everything. But yeah, so far we've had your talent, we have live performance, songwriting, your music, and so the next section we're going to be talking about your image. But yeah, so that is going to do it for me. Thank you so much, guys, for your support and for joining me, and I will see you next time for Singing Tips. So have a wonderful Martin Luther King holiday tomorrow, and I hope that you have a great evening tonight, and I'll see you next time for Singing Tips. Thank you.